Okay, hi everyone. My name is Philip and this is Chelsea.
Hi guys.
Thanks for logging in and welcome to the webinar. We're pleased to have you here. We're going to be running tonight's webinar. We've got some information to go through that hopefully will be of use to you. For those of you who are looking at a career in medicine and looking at pathways into our program. Now, what we have is Chelsea's going to be on the side doing typing on the computer, so if you have any questions you can pop them into the chat box, which you should be able to see on your program, and Chelsea's going to do her best to reply individually to you. Now, speaking of, I can see a message just come through saying, can anyone hear anything? So, want to check first that people can hear. Now we'll just double check to make sure we've done everything our end to allow you to hear, so just bear with us for a moment. If you can hear us, please feel free to pop that in the chat box just so we know that most of you can. Yes, okay, we've got a few people coming through.
So you should call using computer. So if you click on the tab that has Phil's name at the top of your screen, you can then see connect to audio and then choose call using computer, but I will just chat back to you and let you know what to do with that.
Okay, no worries.
So Jordan.
Alrighty, so no problem. So it looks like the majority of you can hear, which is excellent. So we'll get started, and like I said, Chelsea will be able to address your questions as you go. Just so you're aware, if you do pop a question into the chat box, Chelsea will be able to reply directly to you, and so everyone else won't see those answers. So if you put in a question that we think is something that everyone needs to hear, then we'll make sure that we answer you verbally by the end of the session as well. So basically, feel free to put in any questions and we'll get to those. Okay, so we, Chelsea and I, are from the Admissions Prospective Students Office. So we help students who are looking at applying for Flinders University courses, and we also deal with what different pathways are available. Now, medicine is a very popular choice. It's a very competitive course, and as I'm sure you're all aware, medicine is something that a lot of people are to apply for, and it does require a range of different criteria. So what we're going to go through today are the ways to apply for medicine at Flinders, and I dare say the majority of you who are tuning in tonight probably have applied for the Bachelor of Clinical Science and Doctor of Medicine in your SATAC application. So we'll focus a bit on that, but then also look at what other pathways exist as well. Okie dokie. So to get started with, and just to talk about briefly, there is a lot that we're very proud of at the Flinders Medical School. Our program has consistently been rated very highly amongst different medical schools and through different measures over a number of years. I'm not going to go into each that is on the screen, but a couple of them of note is that in 2015 our medical program received the highest endorsement and maximum accreditation possible for us to be able to deliver our program to medical students, and we are the only university in South Australia that did receive the maximum accreditation in that year, which we're very proud of. As well as that, most recently, and some of you may have seen in the news, the 2017-18 Good Universities Guides has Flinders University's medical school ranked #1 in the country for overall educational quality. And that's ranked by medical students, and I believe we ranked just above 94% in terms of students and their satisfaction with our course. So that's a really something we're really proud of, and a really important achievement. It's #1 in the country for that. So certainly we believe we have made an excellent choice to preference Flinders Flinders Medicine. Okay. So what does medicine at Flinders look like? Our program is called the Doctor of Medicine, or MD, which is the qualification required to become a medical practitioner. There are two ways that you can study medicine with Flinders, and that is through in Adelaide or in the Northern Territory as well. So we're going to go through both of those programs tonight. And there's two pathways for entry into medicine at Flinders. So we have our undergraduate or year 12 entry, which is a 6-year program. That's the Bachelor of Clinical Science and the Doctor of Medicine. So again, a lot of you who are tuned in tonight probably have this in your application currently if you're putting in an undergraduate SATAC application. I will go into more detail in a moment on this program, but just briefly, it does include 2 years of clinical sciences, which is like a fast-track undergraduate degree because it only takes 2 years. And on completion of that 2 years, providing you meet a certain grade standard, you have automatic entry into the 4-year Doctor of Medicine program. So that is it's quite a special program in that students are able to complete their qualifications in a 6-year time and know from the beginning that you will be transitioning into the Doctor of Medicine. The other entry pathway into medicine, which is mainly what I'll be talking about tonight, is graduate entry. So this is for students who do the Doctor of Medicine after completing an undergraduate degree. So students will go and study usually a 3-year degree and can then have another opportunity to apply for the Doctor of Medicine, and I will go into more detail on that in a moment. Okay, so rightio. So for the undergraduate year 12 entry, I'll just get these spaces up. So again, a lot of you will have already applied for this, probably looked into this, and some of this, as you know, has already passed, I guess, in terms of the UMAT. So our undergraduate or clinical science Doctor of Medicine option is entry is judged on a combination of your SATAC and your UMAT results. And so we look at both of these. We do not have an interview requirement for this program. It's those two things we'll be looking at. So up the top there, we've got under applying that step 1 is to register to sit the UMAT. Now I understand that if you've done that for this year, then you will have already sat the test. And then the other step is to apply to SATAC, which the majority of you have already done. In terms of the entry score that we look at, we do weigh the ATAR at 90% and the UMAT at 10%. And we do look particularly strongly at sections 1 and 2 of the UMAT. Now, this means that we are looking at a combination, which is why we can't give solid cutoffs as to what ATAR you might need to achieve or what UMAT results you need to achieve. Students do need to perform highly in both of these as it is a particularly competitive program. So no interview requirements. The other couple of things to mention here is that there are no prerequisite year 12 subjects that need to have been completed for this program, although chemistry, physics and biology are considered useful preparation. Now I believe a question's come in, so just bear with me for one moment. Okay. So we have had a question around the UMAT and whether there's a minimum score. So we don't have a published minimum score for UMAT. As mentioned, we do look at the UMAT at 10% alongside the ATAR. But due to the competitive nature of the program and the fact that it is a combination of 2 factors, we don't have a minimum that we can give you as to what you need to achieve. So yeah, unfortunately in that respect, I wouldn't be able to give you an exact answer with that. Okay. In terms of, where was I? Yes, now there are also a couple of different sub-quotas that do exist for this program. So if you are people who are tuning in, if you identify as Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander, then certainly look at what the sub-quotas that you can apply for. What I would suggest is to go on to SATAC and look at the preference for clinical science Doctor of Medicine, and you can see what you need to do as part of applying for that particular sub-quota. Likewise, if you are from a rural, remote area, then as well, I would advise you to check on SATAC, because you can look at which areas we consider for this and what you need to do as part of your application. It does require you to submit extra documentation as well as your SATAC application. Now, the maximum number of places we have in the Clinical Science and Doctor of Medicine program for 2018 is 25 spots. So it is, I would say, probably our most competitive program at the university because we have very limited numbers, which is why we also have other alternative pathways to Flinders Medicine as well. So that's briefly on the Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine program. What I'll do now is move on to the graduate entry, which I guess in terms of looking at pathways to medicine, this is a really important slide because for those of you who do apply for the Bachelor of Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine but are not successful in getting an offer to that program, this does not mean, or this is not an indication of your aptitude to study medicine. We have a lot of applicants who have performed very strongly at school and in their UMAT, but may not have met the requirements for that top 25 spots. So certainly we would encourage you to try not to be disheartened if you are not made an offer directly into that program, but to consider what are some of the other pathways into medicine as well. Okay, so in terms of graduate entry, this refers to applying after having completed an undergraduate degree. Sorry, it looks like we're just having a little bit of computer issues. Are we all good? Yep.
Yep.
No problem. So in terms of applying after an undergraduate degree, this basically requires you to have done a minimum of 3-year undergraduate program. After having completed or during your 3rd year of an undergraduate program, in terms of the requirements for graduate entry, you would need to register to sit the GAMSAT. Now we have a link there for more information about the GAMSAT. If you're in year 12 and you're tuning into this, this is something that is a couple of years away in terms of sitting the GAMSAT, but certainly you can start having a look at what some of the requirements are. So for graduate entry medicine, you must sit the GAMSAT in your 3rd year of your undergraduate degree, and you need to apply to Flinders Medical School, which is actually done directly to the university, and I've got the link there as well. This application process is quite lengthy, and so I would recommend, if you are studying an undergraduate degree with the aim of going into medicine a little bit later on, certainly keep on top of the website that we've got listed there and make sure that you do check out everything that you need to be aware of. As well as sitting the GAMSAT, there is an interview requirement for graduate entry medicine. And we also look at your grade point average, so your scores from your undergraduate degree. So graduate entry medicine does consider a range of measures for entry. So the GAMSAT, an interview, and your grade point average from your undergraduate degree. In 2018, we have approximately 86 spots for graduate entry medicine. And so I guess it's fair to say that the majority of students who study medicine at Flinders do so having gained entry through graduate entry. So just to emphasise again that this is a really strong pathway for entry into medicine at Flinders. Okay. Rightio, so I can probably anticipate some of your questions around, if I'm looking at graduate entry, what type of courses do I need to do to go into that program? We do accept applications from any undergraduate background at Flinders into our Doctor of Medicine. However, we do have some programs that we recommend that you consider, and what we would recommend is that you consider these as backup options in your SATAC application, in your undergraduate SATAC application. So certainly for Year 12s, we would be encouraging you to have the Bachelor of Clinical Science and Doctor of Medicine as at the top of your SATAC application, and then we would be suggesting a backup option based on the information I'm about to go through. So we do have sub-quotas, and that is places that are reserved for Flinders University graduates from certain programs. So going into graduate entry medicine, there are up to 25 places reserved for graduates of the 4 programs that are listed there. So the Bachelor of Health Sciences, the Bachelor of Medical Science, Bachelor of Paramedic Science, as well as the Bachelor of Science Biotechnology, specifically the Medical Biotechnology stream. So if you are studying one of these 4 programs, you're giving yourself an increased chance of entry into graduate entry medicine once you've completed one of those programs. As well as that, we have up to 33 places reserved for graduates of any Flinders University undergraduate or postgraduate courses. So if you came to Flinders and studied a different undergraduate program, to the 4 that are listed there, you would be eligible to be considered with the 33 sub-quota places. If you're studying one of those 4 programs, you'll be considered under the 33 places as well as the 25 places. So from our point of view, certainly if you're looking for your the highest chance of giving yourself the best chance of entry into graduate entry medicine, we would be suggesting considering one of these 4 programs. However, if you're particularly passionate about another area of study that we offer at Flinders University, absolutely do apply for that, and you will also be eligible for the 33 places there. Okay, and another question? Yep, okay, just bear with us, just got another question come through. Okay, yeah, no worries. I'll address that in a moment. So we've got a question about health sciences and medical sciences. And I'm just thinking what we've got coming ahead of us, and I might address that question in a couple of slides' time, so bear with me with that one. Okay, so a couple of other things I wanted to mention in terms of looking at what your SATAC application might look like. Most of you will probably be aware that we at Flinders do offer a range of allied health areas or health professions at Flinders, and if you've had a look on our website or in our brochures or chatted to us at your schools or open days, you've probably been made aware of some of these. So I've mentioned before those 4 courses looking at things like health sciences, medical science, paramedics and medical biotechnology. A few of the other programs that are quite often, I guess, popular with those who are considering medicine as a pathway are our other health professions like physiotherapy, occupational therapy and optometry. The reason I have these on the screen specifically is that something that you can consider in your application, if you have clinical science, Doctor of Medicine as a first preference, you can look at having one of these health professions programs listed underneath that as a lower preference. If you were unsuccessful in getting an offer to clinical science and the Doctor of Medicine program, but you were successful in perhaps getting into your second preference, which was health sciences and physiotherapy, an opportunity is for you to do the first 3 years of the Bachelor of Health Sciences and to apply for medicine. You can apply for medicine in your 3rd year. If you are successful, you can then exit that program with a Bachelor of Health Sciences and go on to medicine. If you are unsuccessful in getting into medicine, you can continue and do your Masters of Physiotherapy after that, because that's the program that you're already in. So if you're interested in medicine, but perhaps also interested in other profession areas like physio, OT or optometry, this can be a really good way of you being able to pursue these areas, but also have another opportunity to apply for medicine 3 years into your degree and to be eligible to compete under those sub-quotas I was talking about before. So something to keep in mind, and the 3 that are on the screen are listed because they do have the health sciences and medical sciences as part of those programs. So pop the SATAC codes there as well, which you can enter into SATAC if you're thinking about perhaps putting one of those or a couple of those into your application. And another question to come through here. Okay, I will talk about that one now perhaps. So we had a question there from Emily, so thanks for the question, around clinical science and the ATAR required and bonus points. So Emily's rightly noted there that 95 is listed for clinical science. Now that is the minimum ATAR required for your application for that program to be considered. So it's not a cut-off, but it means that if you do have 95 or above, then we would certainly recommend having that application, that preference in there, and your application will be considered. In terms of the bonus points question around that, in terms of bonus points, you may be aware that in South Australia we have the equity scheme bonus points as well as the subject bonus points or language literacy and mathematics bonus points. For clinical science and Doctor of Medicine, the equity bonus points are considered towards that preference, but the subject bonus points are not. That's the only course we offer where the subject bonus points are not added or not considered as part of your application. If you're eligible for equity bonus points, either from the school, perhaps automatically from the school that you attend, or if you've applied for individual equity bonus points, which if you want to check, you would need to, well, I'd suggest going onto the SATAC website to have a look at those, the eligibility. If you are eligible for those equity bonus points, they will be considered in the Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine. And in terms of another thing to have a look at is if you're looking at those 4 programs, so health sciences, medical science, paramedics, and medical biotechnology, I guess another thing to keep in mind is having a look at, well, something that's very important is making sure that what you do choose as perhaps a backup option for medicine is something that you would be interested in studying and that you would be, I guess, passionate about, and something that you may wish to pursue in terms of a career area if you do decide perhaps not to go down the medicine line. A question earlier was looking at the difference between health sciences and medical sciences. So I guess my advice around getting an answer for that would be to look at the streams of study that you can do within both of those programs. And what I would suggest is doing some research via our website into each of the programs that you are looking at. We do have on each of our course pages a course rule that actually outlines exactly what you can choose to study. So for example, in health sciences, we do have a number of majors that you can choose from. So what one person does in health sciences might be different to another person who's doing health sciences. For example, someone may choose the health promotion stream or major and focus specifically on promoting health in society and amongst the public. Or you may choose a life sciences stream within health sciences, which focuses more on, I guess, the biological side, looking at things like, which can lead to areas like occupational therapy and physiotherapy. So I guess broadly, I would suggest looking at these different streams to really, I guess, get a good idea of how they differ, medical science and health sciences. What I quite often suggest to students who are looking at which they may want to choose out of the different health programs is looking at what programs lead to which professions. So the reason I popped this graphic up here is that this shows that if you do a Bachelor of Health Sciences, what other areas of health you could potentially lead into. So you can see under Health Sciences there's quite a number of areas that you can go into after completing a Health Sciences degree. 2 that I'll note particularly are OT and Physio. Those 2 programs do require you to have studied certain subjects to be able to go onto them, and they are satisfied through Health Sciences. Likewise, OT and Physio are also satisfied, the prerequisites are also satisfied through Exercise Science. Exercise Science, however, doesn't meet the doesn't make you eligible for those sub-quota places that we discussed earlier. Medical science, you'll note, has some similarities to health sciences in terms of what you can go into, but one that is listed under medical science that isn't listed elsewhere is optometry. So if you were interested in medicine, but also optometry, then my suggestion would be, this is as an example, would be to have Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine at the top of your application, and then the Medical Science Optometry program, and then Medical Science underneath that. Because that's giving you a series of programs, a series of backups in your application. And if you went into something like medical science, depending on how you go with your grades or your career direction in general, you may have the option of going into medicine or optometry at the completion of that program. So I guess it's just worthwhile having a bit of a look, doing a bit of research into which courses lead into what health areas. I'm almost done with the slides, and then I know I've got a couple of questions still to be answered that you've popped in there, and then I'll just open it up generally for any questions that you might still have. Now, in terms of offers and enrolment and I guess application dates is what I'm focusing on mostly here. Now, the majority of you, in terms of us having sent you out an invitation to this, was based on you already having popped in a SATAC application and applied for Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine. For those of you who have put in an application but haven't yet paid for that application, do make sure that you do that by Friday the 29th of September. If you haven't paid by Friday the 29th of September, You can still pay after that date, but there's quite a significant late fee you need to pay after that date. It's about $110 extra on top of the normal processing fee, which is $35 if you're a Year 12 student. So just keep that in mind if you have put in an application but not paid for it yet. Another important date coming up is the equal consideration date. And that's Monday the 4th of December. So Monday the 4th of December is the last day that you can put in an application to SATAC and for it to be considered equally to people who have applied on time. Another important note with 4th of December is that this is the last date that you can add in a range of our competitive health programs into your application. And so if you are considering putting in programs like paramedics or physio or optometry into your application, you need to make sure you've done that by the 4th of December. So definitely also mark that date down in your diaries as well. The change of preference date, Wednesday the 3rd of January, is the last time, up until that date, is the cutoff for when you can make changes to your preferences in your application. So as mentioned before, you need to have these competitive health programs in your application by the 4th of December, but then you have until the 3rd of January to change the order of those if you want to. And if you want to add in any other Flinders courses, you can still add those in until the 3rd of January. After the 3rd of January until the 16th of January, you can't make changes to your application. And the 16th of January is the first SATAC offer round. So that is, if you are competitive for an offer to one of your preferences, that would be the day that you would receive that offer. I might note at this point that if you have applied for the Bachelor of Clinical Science and Doctor of Medicine, if you are made an offer on the 16th of January, congratulations, that's a really great achievement. Make sure that you do follow any instructions that do come with your offer letter around enrolment dates and when you need to accept by, because it is really important that you follow those. And that does go for all of our programs. Some of the more competitive health programs may have sort of stricter requirements in terms of having to accept by a certain date. So just keep that in mind. If you've applied for Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine and you're not made an offer to that preference on the 16th of January, our advice would be to give us a call. If you give us a phone call, we can talk to you about your preferences, your application. We can have a look at how competitive you are for that program. In some years, we may have later round offers for clinical sciences, depending on the uptake from the first round offers. So sometimes there may be reasons for people to not take up their offer, and we may then have some extra opportunity to make some offers into that program in later offer rounds in January. And so if you do give us a call, we can give you an idea as to whether you may be competitive for a later round offer if they are to be made. If you are in, one of the first in line next to be made an offer to that program, then we would be strongly encouraging you to keep that application, that preference active in your application for consideration. So something to keep in mind. We're on the phones after offer day throughout January, and we're more than happy to take a call and have a chat about what your application is looking like, and I guess what might be some of the options for you. Thanks for your patience there. Just going through some of the questions that we have here, so we're going to go through and answer some of these. So to start with, we've got so Francis, thanks for your question. Francis, you've asked if there are places to go into graduate entry medicine at Flinders from other universities' undergraduate courses. So yeah, the answer to that is yes. So if you have studied at another university, you can apply for Flinders Medicine, keeping in mind that with the sub-quota places that we do have available for Flinders students and Flinders students doing those programs, that up to 75% of the spots are reserved for students that are from Flinders University. So there is a very strong advantage of studying at Flinders, but we do consider other university people who've graduated from other university undergraduate courses as well. So that's the answers that one for you. Now let's have a look. What else do we have? Okay, just sorry, bear with us again for a moment. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Taking that one? Yep, might hand over to Chelsea for a couple of questions here. Yep.
Okay, thank you guys. So we're just trying to keep on top of all your questions. So we've got one from Carolyn. Thank you for your question in regards to the IB scores. So in your question, do dates take into consideration the IB scores, which are only released the 6th of Jan? So please make sure that you stick to the equal consideration dates of the 4th of December to have all of your competitive courses in your preferences. With that change of preference date, if you are studying IB, SATAC do give you some leeway to manually change your preferences after that cut-off date that the SACE students have. So what you can do is call SATAC and they will manually change your preferences for you, only for international baccalaureate students. So you do have some flexibility, but please ensure that you have those competitive courses in your preferences by that 4th of December deadline. And then also for Emily, your question, will offers be preferentially given to someone who places Flinders Clinical and Doctor of Med as number 1 compared to someone with a lower preference? So ideally, Flinders does not give preferential treatment, I guess, is the question, to people that have Flinders, say, as their second preference. What SATAC will do when they make the offers is look at your first preference, and they will see how you rank against everyone else that has preferenced that particular course. And if you're eligible for one of those top 25 places, they will make you an offer and not even look at the rest of your preferences. If you're not eligible for one of those places, that's when they'll go down your list to your second preference, and so on until they reach one of your preferences that they're able to make you an offer for. So while we don't say that we offer preferential treatment, we definitely recommend you place the medicine program as your first preference, just so you run for that course in all of the offer rounds. So definitely place either the Bedford Park in Adelaide program as number 1, or the Charles Darwin version that we have as well, with a separate SATAC code for the medicine program that we also run in Darwin. So just on that point, I might touch on the Darwin program. So we do offer 2 medical programs, one in obviously clinical sciences or the MD in Adelaide, but we also offer the same structured programs for undergrad and graduate entry level in Darwin as well. So please, if you're up to moving to Darwin to complete your 6-year medicine qualification, please put the CDU course code in your preferences as well. The first 2 years are with Charles Darwin University in clinical sciences, and then you come on to go into the MD in Darwin with us. So there's a Flinders University facility built on the CDU campus, and that's where you do year 1 and 2 of the Doctor of Medicine program. And then for years 3 and 4, you go to our facility that is purpose-built for you, that is adjoined to the Royal Darwin Hospital. So the good thing about that program is it is sponsored by the Northern Territory government. So they pay your HECS, essentially, for the Doctor of Medicine qualification, but you are bonded to them for 4 years after you graduate. So it's a guaranteed job, and you're pretty much HECS debt free. All of the graduates of that program so far have all been placed at the Royal Darwin Hospital. So they haven't been placed, I guess, in the really remote areas. You are still based at the Royal Darwin Hospital. And it's a really good life experience living up there and away from home. You do day trips out to the remote areas to run community health programs as well and offer community care to the regional areas. But the facilities up there are amazing. So you're essentially in the same lectures as the students in the Adelaide campus, and you're all set up there with your own microphones and you chat before class and everything like that. So it is really a nice environment, a nice learning environment. So if you've got any other questions about that, just chuck them through. So the question, are there lower ATAR and UMAT scores for regional applicants? With that one, there's not a lower score as such. You're just competing against less people. So what happens is we put those places aside, and rather than you competing against everyone that's applied for the program, you're just competing against like students who have come from a regional area like yourself. So I guess there's a little less competition, which may drop the score, but it's still a ranking system. You're just competing against fewer people. So hopefully that makes sense. The next...
I mentioned earlier in the presentation that because it is entry is based on both ATAR and UMAT, there isn't actually a competitive entry cutoff for your ATAR, other than the minimum of 95 that is required. Because what people require for their ATAR in terms of who gets made an offer will differ, because it does depend also on the UMAT as well. So I guess the answer there is that we don't have a competitive entry cutoff ATAR for clinical science, other than the fact that we can say that if your ATAR doesn't meet at least 95, then you won't be able to be made an offer to the program. So is there any way of using a UMAT score when you go into graduate level medicine? That's no longer looked at for graduate entry medicine. It is the GAMSAT. So the UMAT will be looked at as part of the application or the preference for clinical science doctor of medicine, but not for graduate entry. You are required to sit the GAMSAT for that. So hopefully that answers your question there. There's yes, after completing medical or health science undergraduate degree, you do need to sit the GAMSAT. So for graduate entry medicine, doesn't matter what undergraduate degree you do, there's the requirement also to sit the GAMSAT, and and there's also an interview process as well. So so undergraduate degree, GAMSAT, interview. For graduate entry medicine, all three of those components are assessed as part of entry into that program.
How many people does Charles Darwin accept for the undergraduate med course? For our MD program in the Territory, we offer 12 places up there. So with that program, there is a priority to Indigenous applicants and also Northern Territorians, but to be honest, a lot of the times those places aren't filled. So whatever is left over, we will make offers for students to be able to lead into the MD program from around Australia. So while the places are reserved for Northern Territorians, a lot of the times there's quite a few places that are offered external to the NT, just to fill up the places. So it's definitely worth putting in your preferences.
Okay, so the questions that we were looking into there is around a few of you have asked around the UMAT, the weighted score there. What we will need to suggest for you guys who are interested in finding out a little bit more about that is to send in an email directly to our med team. Now what I'm going to do is just change the slide, because we do actually have these details here. So the medicine specific inquiry, so medadmissions@flinders.edu.au. For any of your questions you might have about medicine, you might think of some questions a little bit later on, or around those UMAT weighted questions. our suggestion would be to send in an email to Med Admissions. Our medical staff can give you a more detailed answer on that one than us. So yeah, sorry we can't give you an answer right now, but certainly we'd encourage you to send that email and they'll be able to give you a more detailed answer. And okay, yep, and Vimy has sent in a message there around how to apply for rural entry. Vimy, what I would suggest if you're eligible is to certainly check on SATAC under that course preference, so the clinical science preference. It is listed there. It does require you to put in a stat deck within 10 days of putting in your SATAC application. That being said, if you have put in your SATAC application and 10 days have gone past, still do put it in. So what I'd suggest is going to the SATAC website, look up the clinical science Doctor of Medicine preference. If you scroll down, you'll find the section that says rural remote subquota. There's a link there where you can check your location and to make sure that you would come in under that subquota. And then there is also the further information about the stat deck and where you can find that form and where you need to send it as well. So yeah, definitely make sure that you do that if you're eligible. And around your UMAT score, if your UMAT score won't affect your ATAR, but it will, if the higher that your UMAT is, then the more it will affect your entry rank in terms of being more highly competitive for the program. So I hope that answers your question in that it won't add points to your ATAR, but certainly a very high UMAT result could potentially put you higher in the in terms of how competitive you are for an offer to that program. Okay, so Emily, you've asked around how many people apply for the 25 places. I don't have that information in front of me. Do you have an idea of what we've had in previous years, Chelsea?
Yeah, thanks Emily. So as you can imagine, a lot of people apply for medicine all over the country. So we do have quite a large number of applicants. But what you can do after the first offer round, give us a couple of days to get the data back from SATAC, and then you can give us a call and we will be able to indicate to you in what section you're in terms of competitiveness. So we might say you're very close to the cutoff. Definitely accept your current offer, but ask to be considered for a higher preference in the next offer round. Or we can let you know, I'm sorry, this time it's unlikely that we'll be making you an offer, and we would encourage you to accept whatever offer you have been made. So feel free to call us a couple of days after the first offer round, and we can indicate to you where you're sitting and how likely it may be that you'll be made an offer.
So if you have questions about other programs or just in general your SATAC application, then certainly we can take your inquiries via the 1300 number or our Success at Flinders email address. If you are tuning in as an international student, then I would suggest that you make contact with our international office around your study at Flinders, and we've got their number and their email address and their website there as well. And so do we resit the GAMSAT in the following year if you went in one particular year and you weren't successful, or or if your GAMSAT results were not high enough to get you into the interview stage, then certainly you could look at resitting the GAMSAT in another year to put in an application in a future year as well. Emily, your question around GAMSAT, is it a pass-fail, or is it a competitive result? It is a competitive result. So in terms of progressing in your application, your GAMSAT result does need to be competitive, and your GAMSAT result will determine as to whether you are granted an interview as part of that process for the graduate entry medicine. So yeah, you would be requiring to perform to a certain standard in the GAMSAT to be invited to an interview. We've got the question there from Emily, what kind of accommodations are available in Darwin? What we would suggest is to go to the Charles Darwin University or CDU, website to have a look at what their accommodation options are for their campus. So yeah, check out CDU's. If you go to their website, go to accommodation, you'll be able to see some of the options there. And Nicola, thanks for your question. So a little bit earlier when I was talking about the requirements for Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine, we don't actually have an interview as part of entry into that program. So the Year 12 entry, Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine, is UMAT and ATAR only, no interview required. Interview is only required as part of our entry requirements for the graduate entry program. Around chemistry, look, it's in terms of going into say Clinical Science Doctor of Medicine, it's not a prerequisite, so you don't need to have done chemistry to go into that program. It is listed as one that can be useful, but it's not going to be taught assuming that you have done Year 12 chemistry. And so the clinical science component of that degree, those 2 years, it is quite focused on science-related topics, but it doesn't require you to have an extensive background in having studied science. So if you're in Year 12 and you haven't done chem, then that's not an issue in terms of going into the program. Thank you very much, everyone, for signing in. We hope it has been a useful session for you. It is a lot of information to cover, and it is an area that can be fairly complicated, so it's really important to get as much information as you can. So hopefully this has been of use. So thank you, Chelsea, as well, for
thanks guys. Good luck for the rest of the year.